Hello, we are here and about to talk to about 5.4, which is solving right triangles, which basically, in a nutshell, means finding every single thing that you don't already know. Okay, so sometimes you're going to be given an angle and a side. Sometimes you're going to be given two sides. So I'm going to only do one example here where you know one angle, one side, and kind of show you what's expected and then not go beyond that. Okay. So here's the example that I'm going to start with and do for you. Example. If A, notice it's a capital, is 21 degrees, you also have the degree symbol on there, so you know it's an angle. And little c, that's where it's difficult sometimes because you can't tell the big C from the little c, although the big C should be 90 degrees. So little c, this says 24 feet, so it's clearly a length, which also tells you it's a side. And it says solve the triangle. Okay, and then what you're going to see in varsity is it's going to say A equals B equals C equals little a equals little b equals and little c equals. Well, we already know two of these things. We know little c is 24 and we know big A is 21, right? So if we draw a triangle over here, it's up to you to label it. So I always put my A down there, my B there, my C here. Well, what do we know about angle C? I feel like you ought to know that that's 90 degrees and we can go ahead and label that. So you should actually know three things right off the bat. Okay. So now I'm going to label what I know in the triangle. So I know that this is 21. I know C, my hypotenuse is 24. And I know this guy, he's kind of unimportant, the 90. Like it's important to know it's 90. So it's a right angle, but we're not going to use that for anything. Okay. However, how many degrees are in a right triangle? Do you remember? We talked about it early on. We should know that that's 180. Well, your angle C is 90 and angle A is 21. So if we subtract those two angles off, that's going to equal angle B, right? And so I've already done that. And if you take 180 minus 90 minus 21, we get angle B is equal to 69 degrees. And so that's going to go right there. And now I can label that in here. Okay. And now you're going to use trig to find little a and little b. Okay. So here's where you have some choice. You can decide to use angle A and label this as your opposite. This is your adjacent. And this is obviously your hypotenuse. However, if you chose to use angle B, right, this is a choice. You could choose to use the 69-degree angle, angle B, and then side B would become your opposite, right? So if I'm hesitant to draw in here, I don't want to confuse people, but if this is the choice that you make, then this becomes your opposite. And this is why I'm using two different colors. Then this would become your adjacent, and this is still your hypotenuse, right? So it doesn't matter. I could pick A, and the person next to me at my table could pick B. We label things differently, but we still end up with all the same answers because we're doing everything the right way, right? So I don't like to hem you into one thing. I mean, as long as you found angle B correctly and there's no option, it has to be that number of degrees, then you can pick whichever one you want. I happen to like to always go down to this angle in the bottom and put the angle that I'm going to use down here. So I'm going to use these red ones. I'm going to use opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. But it's not wrong if you want to use angle B and use 69 degrees and make the opposite one over here and the adjacent over here. So totally up to you. Okay. I don't want to say one's right or one's wrong. They're both correct. Okay. So I am going to now say that I'm going to find side A. So to find side A, I'm going to use my opposite and my hypotenuse. So that is my sine. So the sine of A is opposite over hypotenuse. And then if I fill that stuff in, I'm going to get the sine of 21 is, I don't know the opposite, but the hypotenuse is 24. And if you remember from the directions on the last one, it was cross multiply, divide if necessary. Well, when I cross multiply this, I get 24 times the sine of 21 is equal to x, and there's no dividing. So I can just throw this directly into a calculator. And when I do, I get x equals 8.6. Okay, and that would go right here. And then I have to do another trig function to find b. So to find b, I'm now going to go, I need to find this guy, right? I'm going to use adjacent and hypotenuse, and that is my cosine. So cosine of A is adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine of 21 is, I don't know the adjacent, so I'm going to make that x over 24. And then when I cross multiply and divide, I get 24 times cosine of 21 equals x. So really the only thing that changed between this line and this line is the trig function, right? Because the angle is the same, the hypotenuse is the same, but the trig function changes. So when you do the math is going to change. So now I get x equals 22.4059. And this one, what did it say? I don't know what it said to round to. I did not write it down in my notes. But I'm going to go to 3 decimal places. This one was 8.600, by the way. So 22.406. Okay. And that is a note that I have. So these are not terribly difficult. You just have to keep track of what you're finding and make sure you draw pictures and keep things straight and use the same angle all the time. It's harder if you don't do that. And I have a note in here to be sure to read every problem, and take note of the rounding, because I've seen where sometimes they're like round to the nearest degree, and then they're like round to the nearest tenth. And then for sides, they're like round to the nearest side length. And then other ones are like round to the nearest 3 decimal places. So, and it changes all over the place in these assignments. So be super careful with these, okay? Really look at those. And if you think you're getting the right answer, just go back and reread the instructions. Some of you skim over those, you don't really pay attention. So just be careful, okay? Again, I'm only doing the one example. Keep this video short and sweet. If you need some help, come see me. But that's about it for this section. And the next one is law of sines and cosines. We get out of right triangle trig into different types of triangles and still finding missing sides and angles. Okay, toodaloo for now.